Hi, everybody, and welcome to our broadcast today, Build Meets World. I've got one of my favorite colleagues with me today, Chuck Bundrick. Chuck, thank you for being a part of our broadcast today.
My pleasure, Marcy.
Did you hear that? I said one of my favorites.
Yes, I heard that. I'll slip you the dollar.
It was more than that. It's inflation. It's raw material increases, more than a dollar. But all kidding aside, Chuck and I have known each other for many years, being involved in a lot of different industry associations together. And now, even though he wears the Dryvit hat and I wear the Tremco hat, we're all under the same company. So I'm very excited about having all these additional resources that we get to be able to work with on a regular basis. So Chuck, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know your experience in the industry.
Yeah, my name is Chuck Bundrick. I've been in the construction industry for, basically since I started working almost. I got into, the building side of the business probably close to 30 years ago. And fortunately, I started in early on with the exterior insulation and finishing system industry. So I was able to learn from some of the people that started this industry and be able to grow with it. My roles have been, I've been a distributor. I was for a long time a contractor that did both new construction, prefabrication, but we also did a lot of renovation, which was probably the area that I really enjoy the most.
Yep.
And then, now I've been working with the manufacturer at Dryvit for about 5 years, and then recently when we've all come together under Tremco, it's been a unique opportunity to sort of represent everything on the exterior of the building. So yeah, I've been around for about 20 years, 27 years, 28 years doing this, and I've worn a lot of different hats.
Yep. Lots of different hats. So our topic today, or topic of the next couple of broadcasts, is just kind of being on the road with Tremco, right? And just making sure people are aware of their resources and some of the work we've done. When Chuck and I got together to talk about what we wanted to talk about today, we thought it was pretty timely, because what we're really talking about today is how do we retrofit buildings and make them more energy efficient. And in our conversation, we had to note a lot of the things that are going on in the world today that really makes this conversation pretty critical and timely.
Yeah, as you can see, I think we live in this every day. We're seeing extreme heats or extreme colds, or we're seeing extreme weather events. We see it in the news almost every day. So it's something that it's very tangible to our lives. And I think it's important to understand what we can do, to maybe curb some of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it touches home no matter where you're at. Clearly, based on that map right now, we're all really warm no matter where we're at, right? Obviously that has an impact on how we build. We wanted to mention obviously the deep freeze in Texas. So it's almost like no matter where you're at, this is of interest. And Chuck mentioned even these crazy waves that they're seeing in Hawaii. What kind of impact does that have on our structure? So we are certainly thinking about the fact that our climate's in a crisis, and even the U.S. Department of State is talking about it too. So that whole idea of how we work together for future generations. And so I just thought, the information, the world we're living in it's so timely for us to talk about this topic specifically, which is the whole idea of deep energy retrofit and that whole building retrofit. So Chuck's going to kind of take us through some of that history and what that means to us today. So talk to me about the Paris Agreement.
Well, if you've been sort of paying attention to the last couple of presidencies, we were in the Paris Agreement, and we were out of the Paris Agreement. We're back in the Paris Agreement. And a lot of people, I don't know if they understand exactly what the Paris Agreement is and what that is. And today, as of 2021, I'll say, last year and now, what it is, it's really an agreement between 190 of the 197 countries that have formally approved that, something needs to be done to combat global climate crisis. So by doing that, they've all agreed to a goal of zero emissions by 2050. And because of that, they realize that there's going to have to be some sort of legal obligation to provide financing. So when we start talking about, whether it's changing the way we manufacture our cars, how we retrofit our buildings, how we change our lives, those are going to have some significant cost impacts. And so they're obviously formalizing ways that we can tap into some of those funds to be able to make these changes.
Well, and I know this is something that might be very familiar with everybody in terms of the contributor. The largest contributor is our buildings.
Right. So when you're looking at what we can go after, when you start looking to curb climate problems, building energy usage is really probably the biggest target. I mean, I think a lot of people understand, like, if you can get to electric cars, hybrid vehicles, that's going to help. It does, but the numbers will show you that the buildings are by far and away our biggest user of energy. And if you look at the smattering of the building types we have across our country in just the U.S., probably about just over half of them are built, relatively speaking, energy inefficient because they were so old. So yeah, there's a very easy way to get into curbing the amount of energy that we're producing just by tackling the buildings.
Yeah. Well, and I know there's some additional data here that you provided to me in terms of two of the targets we're looking at, not only emissions, but also just the whole idea of, getting the reduction down.
Yeah, so just looking at Canada and the US, they both agree that by 2030, they want to see a 40 to 45% reduction, in the total global greenhouse gas emissions. So you're looking at a reduction below the 2005 benchmark. And really what this is just to set a placeholder in to get to this 2050 goal, which is what 120 plus countries have agreed to, is net zero emissions. So we know that when we look at these systems, we want to be able to absorb as much carbon into our system as we're expelling out of the system. So we want a net zero effect, but we're going to have to put some goals to get there. It's not going to be so quick. And even now we're kind of struggling and finding we're a little bit behind on getting to achieving some of these very drastic goals.
And I know you wanted to provide some additional information about the whole idea of energy versus emissions.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that, we hear the term net zero emissions, and we talk about greenhouse gases, and we talk about net zero energy. And I think the best way to think of this, and I'm sort of stealing this from a previous conference I was at, where we talk about net zero emissions, we're talking about more of an ecosystem. So we're looking at like seas, you're looking at forests, you're looking really at countries or maybe even states, but you're looking at larger ecosystems that can, look at that offset between what they're absorbing and what they're expelling. So that's not a very good or appropriate measure for an individual building. So if you're a building owner, you have to focus on the net zero. You have to focus on energy. And so we look at things like renewable energy sources or energy efficiency measures, and that would be more appropriate for buildings.
Yeah, and some of the previous broadcasts we've had, if you missed them, talked a lot about net zero, zero energy, net zero ready. Those are all past conversations we've had. So those are things that are there and available to you if you're interested, but obviously something very top of mind. And we know that there's some market trends and some different types of providers out there as well.
Yeah, so once we had the Paris Agreement, we're back in the Paris Agreement, there was, more or less some not so formalized, but there was an initiative from Congress to put this Green New Deal out there. And it wasn't really anything to be law. It's really to put a plan together on a national level to start combating climate change. And what you've seen from that is that some states have become early adopters, and they've decided to start putting together their own climate plans. And California and New York are two that are pretty aggressive and been early adopters to this. And but you're seeing also, when you look around the country, that there are a lot of other states or even cities that are starting to look at these programs and understand what's working, what's not working, and how can we adopt, what their successes are into our programs. So what you're seeing is the states are saying, listen, we're going to need to do something with this. We have more of a direct tie to the building and the building owner. And so they're starting to look at some state legislation and also state programs that can incentivize people to retrofit their buildings.
Well, and ironically, a project we're working on through in New York State, I believe, or maybe it's in a different state. It's right behind me. So I just thought that was kind of a unique perspective here as we look at, you know, different adoptions of these programs. I think it's also important, what you shared with me here is just defining it a little bit further, right? There's some light energy retrofit options, and there's also what's considered those deep energy retrofits.
Yeah, a lot of people say, well, we're doing a retrofit or renovation on our building. And I think it's important to understand, you know, that there are probably two approaches, you know, and I like to, you know, segment them into a light or simpler energy retrofit or a deep energy retrofit. A light energy retrofit really focuses on, you know, it's a low impact on the front end. It's, you know, it doesn't require a lot of capital. A lot of times, you know, the easiest way to think of it, you're changing incandescent light bulbs to LEDs. You know, you can measure that savings and you can get that return on that investment immediately. So it's a very low barrier on the front end to get into it. There's a very good reward on the back end, but that's about as far as you can go. If you want to get into a more substantial savings, then you really have to deal with the building envelope. You have to deal with, you know, the amount of energy that's being transferred through the wall system or through that roof system. So when we look at a deep energy, we're dealing with the building envelope. So we're looking at walls, we're looking at windows, we're looking at doors, we're looking at the roof, we're looking at everything on that exterior substrate. So the thing is that that's going to be a more expensive approach. That's where some of the financing it comes in and kicks in to help. I think a lot of people are starting to get wise about looking at planned events and seeing how they can sequence some of this work into a planned event so that they can start capturing some of this and budgeting for it and creating the capital for it. But this is where you're going to start seeing a bigger return on that investment or that energy savings is by getting to these deep energy retrofits and dealing with that building envelope, and also looking at renewable energy sources such as wind or solar.
Well, and I know there's lots of options as well. So if this is ringing true to you, anyone that's watching right now, please reach out to either myself or to Chuck, so we can have that conversation with you. It may not be of interest currently, but it's probably coming to a city or state near you pretty quick.
Yeah, so you can see there's some active markets out there that these have been the deep energy retrofit markets. So like we said, California and New York have been early adopters. The Netherlands has been a pioneer in doing this. UK, Italy, France, Germany, they're all looking at this and putting programs together and figuring out how do we achieve these goals. I think you can also see that there's a lot of states and cities that are also looking at these programs and trying to get an understanding of, you know, what's going to be the best way to carve this up so that it works for our programs, our buildings, our people. So I think that you're seeing a lot more of these states starting to step in and even start benchmarking buildings, you know, or trying to get more transparency as far as energy usage. Because eventually I think you're going to start seeing these cities are going to, I think Boston was really on the forefront of benchmarking and getting energy information on every building so they can map out what their consumption is, what buildings are good, which buildings are performing poorly. And I think that's going to eventually transfer into potentially rental rates, lease rates. So there's a lot of things that I start seeing that are moving towards, you know, defining the climate performance of the building or the energy performance of the building.
Well, and as you mentioned, I mean, this isn't new. I mean, it's been happening in Europe for a long time now. They have these passports for their buildings, right? In terms of really understanding their performance. As you said, Boston's looking into doing, you know, doing that as well, or actively doing that. So I think there's a lot that we can do. Obviously, when we look at new construction, you're not out of the woods either, right? We need to know what impact we're going to have on that new construction build, you know, when it becomes an aged building, right? So there's a lot to consider, and the fact that, you know, so many of our existing infrastructure is energy inefficient. This is something of interest and should be something of interest to all of us.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that, you know, when architects are designing a building today, you know, they're looking at the code, and the code is really the minimum standards you have to meet by law. But, you know, that was those codes were developed in the past, right? A year or two, 5 years in the past. But now you've got these standards that are coming online in some of these markets, and they're saying this is what we want the building to be. And then when you start looking at the 2030, It might be a 2040, but a 2050 date. That's where they want to get the building. So I think they have to be cognizant to look at what's the code telling us to do and what are the performance standards that we have to meet year one after the building's up, because that's going to trigger, it could trigger the fact that some of these guys are going to have to do some deeper energy retrofits just to get the building on track for these 2050 goals.
Well, and then just like you mentioned, there's options, right? There's different ways to get there. There's different ways to facilitate that. And one project that we wanted to mention today is this Clinton Community College. Now, it's interesting because, stay tuned in the future because we've got a lot of these that we'll be able to share. So this is the first of many. We're going to show a video, but do you want to just do a quick intro for us, Chuck, based on what we're going to see here?
Yeah, this is really, I really enjoyed this project, and I love these types of projects. I was contacted by the architect and asked if I would come out and look at this building. What's interesting about this building is it was built in 1890. It's an older building, obviously. It was built with multi-width masonry. They had a fire 20 years later, and they ended up doing some of the repairs with steel structure. So there's a hodgepodge of different materials and construction types on it. But over the years, it's changed use. It was a hotel, it was a dorm, and now it's a multi-use building on this campus. But it was a very inefficient building. They said it's very drafty in there. There's students that meet in there. There's teachers that have offices. They have some areas where they have food courts and things in there. And it just wasn't a very comfortable building. So the goal was really to not change the look of the building, but they wanted to make it more energy efficient. So this is really a good project to look at for deep energy.
Yeah, sure. So we're going to go ahead and share that video here so you guys can take a look at it.
We're in Plattsburgh, New York at Clinton Community College. This building had been around for over 100 years. It's gone through multiple uses, and it was at a time where they wanted to really bring it up into the current environmental codes.
It was just an old building where the heating costs were soaring, and the plaster on the north end was really starting to fail.
The goal was to make it more comfortable because they had staff that are in there, they had faculty in there, students use that. There's a lot of multi-purpose areas. So they were looking at windows, doors, and the exterior envelope. And they really did not want to change the look of the building. So that was one of the reasons that they reached out to Dryvit, was they wanted to see if we could pull a solution together that would match the existing facade.
They told us that they would be able to recreate all of the different details that were on the building out of the foam, which helped a lot. All the dentals and that kind of stuff that were on there. We wanted to not have to, not have them anymore. So it was good that they were able to recreate all those just right out of foam. The different textures and stuff looks like the original building helped. And also the fact that on campus, the other buildings have EFIS too. So it was helpful to tie that building in to the other ones on the campus.
After mapping out what their goals were, we looked at our Outsolation Plus MD system. So we wanted to try to get a fluid applied air and moisture barrier on that existing masonry. Given some of the challenges with some of the masonry that was delaminating, the stucco that was falling, there were going to have to be areas that had to be removed and replaced so that we could apply a weather barrier. And then we added the Outsolation system, and we did a dew point calculation for them. So that was really helpful for us to give an idea how much insulation we were going to need to add to this building to make sure that they got to the goals that they were looking to achieve.
I think it's a great system, especially to, go over the top of any existing building. It's an easy retrofit, and I think it's durable. Like, we've used EFIS for a lot of different projects for the last 8 to 10 years, and I think those projects are still going strong. I think it does have a stigma a little bit, but they're probably just using a lesser product, and not the good products that Dryvit has for toughness and stuff. There's different meshes and all that kind of stuff. You just have to specify, the right system to use, I think. So
Just watch.
Pretty cool. Interesting video. What I like is that it shows that you can keep that existing look if you want, right? So you don't have to go with something brand new or something different like what I have behind me. This is a whole new system that's going to go on that existing facade. So that's an option too. And that's what I love about the capability that we have here.
Yeah, the reason I like this project was that, a lot of the deep energy programs are really revolving around a prefabricated approach, which obviously that we have several different panel types that we can meet those goals with. But, you know, that wasn't the approach that they wanted here. They wanted to make sure that we did the due diligence to match what was there. They didn't want to change the look. So when you start looking at in the marketplace at some of these buildings that have been around, or they have some sort of historic listing, you know, we don't have to change the look of it. We can improve the energy performance. I mean, it's maybe a little bit more involved, but, you know, that way you can hang on to that existing look if that's what they want to do. Or, you know, again, if they wanted to change the look and bring it into some new look, you know, we have a lot of options for doing that. But that's why this one was really pretty neat, just because they wanted to, it's a totally different feel in the building, but it didn't change the look at all.
Yeah. Well, and I just to kind of round out today, I just included a couple more pictures just so people, in case you missed some of the detailing that was in that existing structure. And it'll be pretty cool. So these are all the before pictures, you know, showing the detailing that's going to be needed in terms of making that work. And then, you know, as the video showed some of the work through that process, you can see the mix of, as you mentioned, the different materials that you were dealing with as you had to remove and replace to repair some of that existing structure.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know this was the system that was selected. Was there, what made you choose this system specifically?
Well, that wasn't the initial system, you know, because of the, you know, the challenges to put a weather barrier on because of the existing multi-width masonry. And as you know, Marcy, you know, being able to get a consistent mill thickness for that, it was going to be, you know, at the time we discussed it was going to be pretty costly to try to do that, you know, without having to add some type of cement board in areas. But, you know, they were adamant about performance. So they really felt that, you know, they wanted to have the air barrier on there. They wanted to reduce any kind of drafting, any energy leakage through that building envelope. So we had to, you know, they had to spend the additional money, and we had to do the extra work to get down to a point where we could apply a weather barrier. So yeah. This wasn't the first system, but this was the system they ultimately chose just because of the performance.
Well, and once again, I like that the versatility of getting it to the, you know, what performance they were looking for from their goal perspective. And once again, just kind of showing the pictures of the work and the process throughout this. Now, you did mention in the video doing a calculation for them. Is that something that you is common for us to help out with then?
Yes, we can do, you know, we have a free kind of a courtesy dew point calculation we can run that approximate, you know, how much insulation you're going to probably want on that exterior as a minimum. I know that we also have the ability to do some Wolfie analysis if we need to do something a little bit more significant. But the idea is to try to, you know, again, when you look at the energy codes of the or the building codes, everything they put out there is a minimum standard. But again, when we talk about what we're seeing as far as some of these 2050 goals, maybe we're adding another inch of insulation. Maybe you're adding 2 inches. That's really very inexpensive when you're doing the work. But I think it's important to understand how much you need as a minimum and what you would think of as a maximum so that you've got some goals.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then this is the true test, right? Not only did they want the goal of having a more energy efficient structure, obviously the air and weather resistant barrier was important to them, but they wanted the before and the after to look pretty darn similar. So I think you achieved it here. Hard pressed to see the difference of the before and the after. And I think some of those benefits, once again, of using you know, exterior insulated finish systems is that ability to do and mimic the detailing that they needed for this one.
Yeah, I think it's important because on these schools, when you go to a school campus, they're adamant about the look of the campus, you know, whether it's a type of brick or the stuff, whatever it is, the colors. And I think what we've been able to demonstrate is that on this project, but we've done others where, you know, we've got a pretty wide range of aesthetics and products that we can develop or we can deliver solutions to maintain the same look on these campuses. So I think schools are one segment that is really looking at some of these energy goals and trying to improve their energy performance. So I think it's important for them to understand that we do have solutions that we can maintain the looks of their campuses.
Yeah, exactly. And then once again, there's a lot of great the Dryvit Systems YouTube channel if you want to check out that video again, or a lot of the installation videos that that exist on there. Great resource of information. And ironically, we just posted a new blog I believe this week on our Build Meets World blog that goes into EIFS versus stucco, what's the difference, written by our Al Zabo there, 40 years in the industry and with Dryvit. And the very first picture is the college. So I thought that was pretty ironic that we were featuring this on our broadcast today. Lots of great information there, as well as more to come from us as it relates to deep energy retrofit. So here's another blog that was written by another colleague of ours, Josh Hauk, the ABCs of DER. So this is just the beginning of what we want to be able to share, educate, and work with everybody on. And once again, Chuck Bundrick is a great resource for this information. You can always reach out directly to me if you have any questions. And as always, if anyone has a project, has a condition, has something they want to share, you can go ahead and reach out directly to me so we can feature you on Build Meets World. Talk to us about your challenge, your situation, your project, whatever it may be, and we'd love to have you. So Chuck, once again, thanks for being able to be on this broadcast today. Any final thoughts for everybody before we close off?
The only thing I would add, see if there's any questions, but again, I would reach out to us if you're looking at or considering any type of renovation. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a deep energy. If you're just looking to kind of get to that 2030 goal, and maybe we're just retrofitting some type of air barrier, we're dealing with just air sealing, or we're getting into a full deep energy retrofit. I mean, we have a number of different ways we could help achieve some of those goals. So again, I would definitely reach out to us and let us help you kind of look at the solutions and understand what your goals are and see how we can marry it up a program.
Yep, absolutely. So go ahead and there is a few questions. If anyone has any additional questions, go ahead and put them in the question tab. The first question we have is just about resources. So this is an individual that's not in any of the states that you mentioned. And is there a resource or a website that they could go to in order to understand what their retrofit goals might be coming in the future, or different resources for them if they're not in one of those states you highlighted?
One of the better resources, and I'm not sure if they're putting anything on the website yet as far as where the programs stand individually, but betterbuildings.gov is a really good resource. When I started, kind of jumping onto that website, they had about 7, energy efficiency, financing mechanisms that you could tap into. Now you go to that website and it's a myriad, depending on how you own the building, what state you're in, what your goals are, and they can show you all the different programs that are available to you both federally and in the state, so that you can tap into those to do your energy retrofits. I would imagine they're going to start putting some of this information as far as which states, or at least federally, what some of the goals are. So I think that's a good place to start, and then you can always find resources within there for your individual state. So they'll connect you with people.
Another question was about funding. So would that be a good resource for funding as well, to understand what's available to them?
Yes. So betterbuildings.gov is a real good place to go. And again, when you put in, like, you're looking at a building, maybe it's something we own, we own a certain percentage, we're in this state, we're looking to do this type of a renovation or a retrofit, it will start listing, you'll take you through and it'll list down, what mechanisms, what financing options are out there. PACE is a program that's been in a lot of states, and they're continue to expand. So they're also somebody that can do a building envelope. So that can be combined with whatever federal programs you have. There's also 173, I think it is, tax increment, which is just a standard deduction you can get for any kind of energy improvement or renewable energy you do to your building. So there's a lot of programs that are out there, and you don't have to pick one or the other. They can be used. You can use as many of those as you can get your hands on.
And I know we're working with a couple of those different programs directly. Is there a need out there for us to find some buildings for us to utilize some funds that we have for these programs?
Yes, to be honest with you, I'm looking for 2 buildings right now. We are working with the Department of Energy through NREL, and we're demonstrating some deep energy retrofit programs. So we're looking for 2 buildings, preferably multifamily, maybe in the western part of the United States, that somebody would be saying, hey, we're actually looking at doing something along these lines and we'd like to learn more. there could be some financing available through the grants that we have in order to help achieve some of those deep energy retrofits somebody might want to do.
Okay, so once again, mtyler@tremcoinc.com if that's ringing true to anybody right now, if you have a building that you think that you'd want to, engage with us on for utilizing some of these funds within this program. Last question we'll take is there a typical building we're looking for when we look at retrofitting? Or is it really just any building can be?
It really can be any building. I think, the challenge that we've seen so far is that when you go from the East Coast to the West Coast, the building typology changes so drastically, the architectural elements change so drastically. So, the boxier the building, the easier it is. When you get into like the Clinton Community College where they had a lot of architectural elements, dentals, window trims, today we're able to do a lot of those prefabricated. So it does bring the cost down and makes the whole process go much, much more efficiently. So I think we don't have to shy away from those. But obviously the buildings that are more boxy, I think what you find typology is you're looking at 3- and 4-story buildings around the country that are generally multifamily. That's what most of these states are targeting because those could stand the biggest improvement. And that does offset some of the costs that some of the lower income community is paying for energy costs. So I think they're targeting those initially to be able to do those retrofits.
Yeah, and I know, building use has changed through the years too, so that's going to impact the efficiency of the facade, things like that. But, there's just been different comments as well in our question pane today about, don't just change the windows, make sure you know what's going on throughout the entire enclosure, because that could be a costly mistake somebody makes just to trying to improve a window versus the window to wall connection and maybe some other elements of that structure.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be doing a planned event, whether it's an HVAC upgrade or it's sealants or paintings, I think it's good to do an evaluation, whether you reach out to us or if you're working with a consultant and, evaluate maybe where you're at, where you could go. And instead of spending the money, like you said, maybe in an air conditioning system or an HVAC handling system, you might be able to do some improvements to get to these 2030, 2050 goals. And then reduce your, the load on the building so you could downsize on your equipment. So I think you have to rearrange maybe what your planned capital investments are.
Yeah. And if you are looking and interested in a design professional in your area, you can also reach out to us. We work with lots of them and we can make some recommendations on some of the colleagues that we know in the industry with lots of experience in this area. So, well, thanks everybody for your attention today. Thanks for all the questions. And of course, Chuck, thanks for being part of the broadcast. We look, yes, you just said it, anytime. We look forward to having you, you did it. We look forward to having you back on. Maybe we'll be out on a couple of these projects when we're actually retrofitting. I think that'd be pretty exciting to kind of see some of those actions right there out in the field. So keep me apprised when you're ready to do that kind of stuff. So
Will do.
Perfect. Okay, thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.